So in the last lesson and the last screencast, we looked at the aims and effects of custodial sentencing, and we learned that recidivism is still quite high, even through the use of custodial sentencing. So in this screencast, we're going to look at some ways of dealing with offenders inside of prison and also as an alternative to prison. So 3 ways of dealing with offenders we're going to look at then is behaviour modification, which is based on the behaviourist approach, anger management, which is based on the cognitive approach, and then restorative justice programs. So behaviour modification first of all then, and this is based on the principles of operant conditioning. So within prisons, a system is often used called a token economy, and this uses behaviour shaping to nudge inmates into the sorts of behaviours that are desirable and that society wants to see. So the way it works is that when an inmate shows a particular behaviour which is desirable, they're given a token, and after a certain amount of time those tokens can be exchanged for benefits within prison. So the token acts as a primary reinforcer, and then the secondary reinforcer are the things that the tokens can be exchanged for. As a result of this, the inmate will learn more desirable behaviours and will stop showing the less desirable behaviours. Anger management is based on a cognitive approach, and it's a form of CBT. So there are 3 phases to anger management. The first one is cognitive preparation, and this is when the inmate and the therapist would work together to identify the triggers and the times in which they may lose their temper and become angry and aggressive. So they're picking up on those trigger situations. The second phase is skills acquisition. And this is when the inmate and the therapist would work to develop coping strategies and techniques which mean that they can deal with these trigger situations in a non-violent or non-aggressive way. The third phase is application practice. This is when the inmate would practice their new skills. So this is likely to be through role play with the therapist. So they would act out some of those situations where previously they may have become aggressive, and they would put these new skills into practice. The third way we're going to look at is restorative justice programs, and this is something which looks at the needs of the victim over the needs of the state. So the needs of the state might be that a criminal has to be confined, they have to be kept away so they can't offend again. The needs of a victim might be slightly different. They may be looking for healing and for moving forward rather than just having an offender confined. So restorative justice programs usually involve a face-to-face meeting between the offender, the victim or the victim's family, and a neutral mediator who will run the meeting. And for the victim or for the survivors, there's an emphasis on healing and empowerment, about getting closure and about moving forward from the crime that they've been subject to. For the offender, the emphasis is on responsibility and a positive change in their behaviour. So really understanding the effect that they've had on the survivor and thinking about how they can change their behaviour as a result of that. Now, not all restorative justice programs involve a face-to-face meeting. Sometimes money is given, so financial resources are given in order to pay maybe for damage that is done to a property, but most restorative justice programs will follow this general pattern. So you can read more about ways of dealing with offenders in the pre-reading. But make sure before you come into the lesson you can use behaviourist principles to explain how behaviour modification works. You can use cognitive principles to explain how CBT can be used to treat anger issues, and you can explain the aims of restorative justice and how it works.